Hello, and welcome to the Property Marketing in China event held by Reach, Westwin, and me, myself at 360 Property. And I'm Richard Johnson. I'll be your host for today. Thank you for joining us. As I think you're all aware from joining us, the overseas property market from China is continually booming. I mean, numbers from last July are actually that there's been a 231% increase in searches of Chinese users looking to invest in overseas. And what we're going to explore today is where we have all of that interest, how we turn that interest into a marketing strategy and that marketing strategy into property purchases. So I'm joined today by Alan from Westwin and Ji from Reach. And we're going to be talking about various parts of the market, whether it's search, whether it's social media and other activities that you can look at. I mean, for some context, there was some research by Knight Frank that was recently done. In terms of property purchases in the UK, 15% of every property of over £1 million was purchased by someone from China last year. And that actually rises to 20% when it goes into properties of over 10 million. So there is a real appetite for the market. However, legislation changes means that it's very challenging at times for Chinese investors to both understand and invest overseas, and also how as businesses we can become part of that community, but give the trust and the authorities that we're able to communicate with them effectively on their channels. With that, I will hand over to Alan. Just on housekeeping, if you can keep yourselves on mute, any questions, please pop those into the chat and we will answer all of those at the end. So Alan, over to you.
Fabulous, thanks Rich, and thanks everyone for joining us here at Property Marketing in China. So we've done a few of these webinars in the past, and what we're trying to do now is make them vertical specific. So we want to give you the ideas, the tips and strategies to kind of take your marketing in China to that next level and really kind of drive the sales, accordingly. Before we jump into the presentation, a little bit about who Westwin is for those of you excuse me, for those of you who don't know us. So we started life as Microsoft Online or Microsoft China about 17 years ago. It was a joint venture between the Shanghai government and Microsoft. And in 2016, we became Westwin, a fully Chinese company, and retained that Microsoft Ads, that Bing Ads offering to Chinese companies who we help manage their global search strategies. And at the same time, we launched Inbound, and Inbound is here to help Western companies to do better marketing inside China on Chinese platforms. So we have a raft of services and clients across all verticals, and property and real estate is one of our key and increasing verticals when it comes to helping overseas clients. I want to start with just an overview of the social media market inside China and the world. So this slide is provided by We Are Social and Hootsuite. Some of you may have seen it, and it kind of gives an overview of one of the biggest social media platforms on the planet. It's always interesting to see how many of those are Chinese. So we've got Facebook at the top with 2.9 billion monthly active users, followed by YouTube. So Google, 2.5 billion. Then we have a couple of other Facebook or Meta platforms, WhatsApp and Instagram. And then the fifth biggest social media platform in the world is WeChat. So WeChat has 1.2 billion monthly active users, and that's pretty much everyone in China. We've then got Facebook Messenger, TikTok at 1 billion. So that's a ByteDance own, that's a Chinese platform, but is a separate app to Douyin, which is the Chinese TikTok. And then Facebook Messenger, so Facebook again, followed by Douyin with 600 million monthly active users. I will talk a bit more about Douyin as we go through this presentation, so I won't touch on it, I won't stay on it now. And then we have three other Chinese platforms, so QQ, which is again Tencent owned. It's sort of the messenger platform and was the precursor to the birth of WeChat. Then we have Weibo, 573 million monthly active users, which is Chinese Twitter, ostensibly. Kuaishou, again, which is a Tencent invested platform, and it's very much sort of live streaming and video. And then the remaining, we've got Snapchat again, which kind of goes up and down in monthly active users, followed by 5 slightly smaller social media platforms. So how does that compare? What's changed since We Are Social and Hootsuite last did this report? Well, let's have a look. Let's split them out by China on the right and Western on the left. So you can see the red arrows indicate who's been kind of dropping down the rankings, and since this was last done in November. And you can see there Facebook Messenger actually dropped a place to TikTok, so lost a place there and saw their monthly active users drop. And they've had, with regard to their sort of share valuation price, they're struggling to demonstrate that they can continue meaningful user growth at the moment, and that's reflected in their valuation. And Telegram, for a number of reasons, is quite widely used in Russia and Eastern Europe. And for those reasons too, has sort of seen its numbers kind of come down. If we look at the total number, so we add all that as a cumulative score, we have 13.6 billion, so monthly active users, and that compares to November at 13.5 billion monthly active users. If we have a look on the right, so we've got the Chinese platforms there, and we have WeChat, far and away the leading platform when it comes to monthly active users at 1.2 billion, and then followed by Douyin, which we just discussed, at 600 million, and then QQ, Weibo, and Kuaishou, all at a similar sort of monthly active user base. The total cumulative number for China is 3.5 billion. And that's slightly up on the November figure at a lower 3.51 billion. The total global audience, so if you add those two numbers together, you have a total monthly active user base of 17.2 billion. And China would account, using those numbers, for 21% of that total audience. And what we're trying to do and advise to all of our clients who are either active already in China or looking to be active in China is that if you have a global marketing strategy and you are running campaigns in APAC, but you're not on any of these 5 platforms, you're not really running an APAC campaign, nor are you running a global campaign. Really, China accounts for 21%, according to this data, of global marketing opportunity. And our help, our assistance is in activating to that 21%. How important is WeChat? It's hugely important. And if you take that 1.2 billion monthly active users and as a percentage of that total opportunity of Chinese monthly active users, it's at 35%. So this presentation will look in detail about what you should be doing now on WeChat, and also we'll also have a look at some of the other platforms that are contained here. So let's have a look at the typical buyer journey for a Chinese investor who's looking to buy a property overseas. So we tried to split it out into sort of 3 areas. And then what we can do is kind of look at the platforms and look at the strategies employed with each of those 3 areas and how to activate in a way that will guarantee best ROI. So the first phase for a typical Chinese buyer is one of research. They're looking into where to buy and why to buy. And that where to buy is, it's distinctly motivated by the Western mantra, location, location, location. So Chinese have areas around the world, countries around the world, where they typically will buy properties. And if you're a developer or if you're an agent who has those properties in those areas, it makes sense to make sure that you're doing particularly the biggest channels in China, but also saying the right things on those channels. When it comes to the factors that the average Chinese buyer will consider when making one of those purchases, we have a list of them here, and the key ones are education for their children. So there are approximately about 1 million overseas Chinese students, and those 1 million overseas Chinese students need a place to stay when they're at university and studying. So a lot of what we're seeing with the outflow of Chinese investment into property is for their children to come and study at university. And then it's also, they have that property even once they've graduated. From an investment perspective, so property has always been historically a decent bet when it comes to diversifying and making sure that your risk is manageable. And investment is always a key part of that. When it comes to emigration, so there are currently 60 million thereabouts Chinese overseas, and emigration is a trend that will continue long into the future, and that should be a key factor when considering what to say in your marketing message. So what advantages and opportunities, and Hong Kong for particularly for Britain is a key call to action, a key selling point for Britain. Holiday homes. So at the moment, there's not many outbound. There's not a lot of outbound travel apart from business and education, but it will come back, and it will begin to come back at the end of this year and into next year. And when we look at the data from the last more normal year in 2019, there were 169 million overseas holidays by Chinese, and lots of Chinese will want that second home in a climate and a country that they love and want to visit. So that's another sort of key driver for these buyers in China. And perhaps they want to rent it out. And again, they'll look at sort of yield and what's possible with regard to an income, or they want to retire to. There are 707 million middle class currently in China, and that demographic is slowly getting older. And more Chinese are looking to retire in countries that are outside China. Other things to consider would be currency leverage. So, how strong is the yuan to the pound or the euro or the dollar? And right now it is particularly strong. And, that's going to play a key factor in, finally making that offer on a flat or penthouse. Other things to consider are, who's involved in that conversation. And you have agents, lawyers, and advisors, particularly if you go up to properties above 10 million, then you have advisors to, say, a family office, and all of these moving parts need to be catered to and addressed. The process of buying a house overseas is a complicated one. The capital outflow is restricted by the government, so there are Chinese need a myriad of ways to actually put those initial deposits down. And to get those deposits down, they will have a network of help and advisors that should also be part of that marketing communication strategy. Value and yield. So any investment needs to ideally make money and drive an income. And one of the key historic psychological motivations for Chinese buyers is it's always the land over the property. So they will always want an idea as to what's the future of that building, and because in China it's very much about land over the building. The next phase on the typical buyer journey is one of consideration. So the Chinese buyer has possibly made up their mind with regard to where they want to buy and why they want to buy. And at this point, as a developer or as an agent, you should start to consider the following factors. So how reachable is that developer on social media? And on keenly Chinese social media, because that's native to China. Is the website in Chinese? Little simple fixes like translating some pages, particularly for properties that are going to do very well in China. It's very cost efficient and it makes sense to do. Are your brochures in Chinese? So again, get those translated to simplified Chinese and make sure that when you're offering the product sales information, it's all done in a way that's native to that buyer. And I think fundamentally, how seamless is that consumer journey? And by that, I mean, if they were buying a house in China and now they're buying a house overseas, is the user journey equivalent? And that should be the aim of anyone who's looking to sell overseas property to a buyer in China. The platforms listed at the bottom here, we're going to go into more depth. So we're just kind of now alluding to those platforms that we're going to look at. And finally, on the typical buyer journey, we look at the actual sale itself. And when it comes to the sale, what is the overall strategy? So you've gleaned your lead, you have your list of leads, they're passed on to the sales team. And here are some factors that you should consider at that point. are the leads properly vetted? And by that, I mean, have the leads been approached with regard to the next step on that journey? Have they requested a viewing or virtual viewing or brochure or price information? And are they aware that if that lead is then passed on to perhaps an agent, are they aware that that's happening? Are they fully knowledgeable of what's going to happen next? And more often than not, any kind of jarring experience to the user there may translate in the less likely conversion to sale. So that's kind of a key thing to consider. Is the sales contacting the buyer on the native platform? And we're going to look in detail at WeChat for that. Is marketing automation being used? So if you have marketing automation, say you use Pardot or HubSpot, whatever it is, can you use that same tool for your Chinese user experience? There's no reason why you can't, so long as everything is perfectly translated and localized. And the complexity of the buying cycle. So this isn't a simple e-commerce purchase. This is a long, time-consuming, decision-based purchase, and that needs to be factored in. So any kind of test, say you're new to China and you want to kind of run a test campaign, we do recommend a slightly longer test period and a minimum of 3 months really to kind of get a feel for just how qualified those leads are going to be. And some of the ways to make that sale could be on the website, within WeChat, or through a mini program or app. So I want to start with search. Search is historically our sort of background as Microsoft. So we'll start with the 3 most established platforms for search in China, one of which is a platform called Baidu. Very much rules the roost in China with 70%, slightly higher than that, but there we go, 70% market share. And then we have 2 other search engines, 360 and Sogou. 360 started life as an antivirus and then evolved into something else. And it's as an overseas company, if that's what you are, then it's very easy for you to kind of get that 360 account up and running and performing reasonably well. Sogou is Tencent owned. It's the same search engine that powers WeChat, so it's slightly harder. So if any of you have gone through the process of setting up on WeChat, it is a complicated and time-consuming process, and the same for Sogou. So it is a key platform, particularly if you want to start bolstering your organic efforts on WeChat. And Sogou, by pushing paid media through that channel, will help with visibility in search on WeChat. But Baidu very much leads the way, and lots of what we're going to look at is going to be based on Baidu, and we have some new platforms that we're very excited to announce to help you to do better Baidu. So let's look at a typical Baidu search engine page. So this is an example of some of the searches that may be ran on Baidu and Google. So there's a similar sort of psychological searches that may be run. So the first one here, we have a brand query. So they're interested in a particular brand. And you can see here, the page has been split up into 3 color-coded sections. So at the top, we have Baidu ads. So that's your paid for PPC paid search ads. In orange, we have, interestingly, this is how it differs to Google. We have Baidu owns properties. So whereas Google, you may do a search on Google and see Google Maps, beyond that, you're pretty much seeing what Google considers to be the most useful and relevant results. Baidu is slightly different. Baidu has a number of different products which it uses to help answer user queries. Some of those products you can see listed at the top right, and you may have a biker page, which is similar to Wikipedia or Jidao or Taba, and all of these different Baidu properties help the user to get the information that they need to make the right decision. So you can see across all of these searches that the prominence of orange is quite large. There's quite a lot of Baidu owned properties. And if you're considering to do SEO in China, then a lot of the SEO work that we will do from a link building perspective will actually be done with Baidu. So what we generally say is the main competitor in Baidu SEO is Baidu itself. So slightly different to what's normal on Google. And then finally, we have in blue the organic results. So you really put your heart and soul effort into building those links on external websites, and you may see that traction. You may see those results appear in the organic results. So you can see a similar pattern across each of these sales each of these search queries. The sales query at the end, again, at the top in prominence in orange is that paid search. If you want to start owning searches which are relevant to you as a developer or agent, then Baidu paid search is the quickest win. It's the quickest way to drive interest and leads, followed by SEO. And we're going to give you some tips on how to do better SEO. And with regards to organic, again, that's sort of a bigger question that you need to ask yourself, and whether you have the budget to commit to an extended project of link building. With regard to some SEO quick tips, do you do technical SEO currently on your Chinese pages? So have you translated some of your website to Chinese? If you have, these are some good tips. So proofread your translations. Do make sure they're properly proofread. We've had some clients in the past who haven't done that, and they've come afoul, and there's been mistranslations, and that's affected their business further down the line. Or just ask us to do it, that's fine. There are plenty of tools out there to kind of get an idea of the demand for your properties in China, one of which is Baidu Index, so similar to Google Trends, and you can just take that, add in your Chinese keywords, and get a feel for just how popular the area or the building or the brand is in China. If you have a Baidu account already, it has a keyword planner like Google called Fengchao, and this is a great way to get really useful granular ideas of demand for the buildings, for the properties, based on where they are and how much they are, etc. However, if you don't have one of those, that's fine. So we've now launched a new product called Reach SEM, and this is now live. It's a free product. Basically, it takes all of the best parts of Baidu and offers them in an English language platform. We'll be providing a link at the end for anybody who wants a demo of this, or anybody who wants logins just to kind of start using the platform and getting a feel for just how much data there is in Baidu. When it comes to offsite SEO, the tactics are pretty much the same. So if you have a Western SEO agency who are currently optimizing your organic rankings, the same tactics and strategies that we employ are pretty much akin to what we would do in China. If you're writing with expertise, authority, trust, that's a good starting base. And then everything else we do around that is kind of done on a data-led base. So, what keywords are you looking to rank for? And then we would employ these strategies with regard to how easy it is to get you ranking based on those keywords. I now want to look at, I did mention the launch of Reach SEM. So this is a totally new product. It's just gone live this week. And Reach SEM is built in sort of 3 sections. So let's say you want to plan your keywords in Baidu. You want to get a feel for just how much interest and desire and demand there is for your products. Then you can use Reach SEM to do this. You log in, you type in your keywords in English, instantly translated, gives you the volumes, search volumes, clicks, and costs. So that's one way of using it. Let's say you want to activate on Baidu. So you think there's loads of demand for your property, and you want to launch something. You can do that all in the platform, and it also provides functionality for just porting over your Google or Bing campaigns. So you want to drop those in, drop in the keywords, drop in the copy. It's all sent off for translation and proofreading. Comes back to you within 48 hours, and then you can just launch the campaign there and then. And when it comes to scaling, so Baidu by design has been built with many different data points, and we wanted to make certain that all of those data points were available to you as the customer. So what we've done is provided all of those different metrics in English in a way that's user-friendly and easy to get that data out of the platform. And what we found with clients who are already active on Baidu is they get back some data, but perhaps not all of it. And we really wanted to give you that data back at a Baidu level, so you could see what was happening right down to the nth degree. So what we've created a reporting part of this, which pulls all of those metrics straight out of Baidu and then puts it in a format that is easily digestible and in English. So the biggest social media channel is WeChat. So 1.2 billion monthly active users. It's the world's 5th biggest social media platform. And what we normally say is that if you're not on WeChat, then you are invisible in China. So, if you haven't made that step, do take that step. It's very easy to do. The original Reach.net solution enables that. A tiny cost point. So do consider that as a if you haven't already, do consider WeChat as your sort of first starting point. You can activate it through any certified partner like us, or you can do it through Reach.net. And if you do it through Reach.net, the verification fees are all covered. So why is WeChat so important? Well, it really is that one app to rule all apps. And here's an infographic of just how well it is used in China. And it's one of the only apps that is kind of used at every point of the day. So when it comes to my colleagues in China, I will do most of my daily work on WeChat. I will come off email, and most of the work will happen on WeChat. It's used as soon as people get up to check what's happening from either a work perspective, but also from a friends and family one. It's used throughout work. It's just a normal communication tool at work. And then going home again, it's used to just check on latest news, catch up with friends, book movie tickets, get a taxi, whatever it is. And then again, checked before going to bed. So it has that 77-minute average daily use, and that's a figure that is probably conservative. And it really is that only app that kind of does all of that. And the reason why it has been designed in a way that everything should be done in WeChat. So think of it as a sort of mashup of WhatsApp and Facebook, and then also its own app store. So all of the functionality that's been added in has come from that almost an open source solution, but based on its own ecosystem of apps or mini programs. Let's have a look how property companies are activating on WeChat. So here's an example from a property developer in Thailand, and you can really see that long form content is key to WeChat. Don't be afraid to kind of pull your punches. Users on WeChat are there to kind of get into the detailed long read. And you can see an example here with loads of text. This has been translated, but loads of text and plenty of images. And that's the type of content that would do very well on WeChat. And from a video, again, you don't have to think TikTok. You can think long form in video as well. So here's the same developer. It's over a 5-minute long video, and they really go into detail on the tour of the flat. So they show them the inside of the fridge, what's the wall made out of, and this is a tour with a Chinese influencer who is based in Thailand, which if you have got the budget to kind of work with influencers, then this is a great way of doing content on WeChat. But again, the takeaway here is, don't think TikTok, think long form. And WeChat is very much that place where, the user is in that consideration phase, and they really want to kind of get a feel for the developer and brand at a deeper level than simply a surface one. We've got 10 top tips for WeChat. So our first top tip is, write about what you know. And we're constantly telling our clients to do this and to not try and kind of reposition their thinking into a Chinese mindset, particularly if they don't have Chinese employees or an office in China. And that our advice is just write what you know. You know your properties better than anyone, and the users in China are going to be as interested, if not more so, than the Western users who may already be buying those properties. So when it comes to translation, localization, do that insofar as like a platform like Reach will do that. But beyond that, you don't need to reinvent your entire brand identity for China. If you have USPs that are keen to your business, they will translate over. Our second top tip is great content is great content in whatever language. And what we're saying here is if you've got that great evergreen content, which is doing well on your Western socials, please reuse it on the China ones. A lot of what we do now is taking clients who are on TikTok and taking those videos and putting them on Douyin. And we may, tweak those a little bit and add a bit of dubbing or subtitles. And you'd be surprised just how well the engagement improves from doing that. And just that, So the content itself is pretty good. Our third top tip is for WeChat, particularly think long form. And from that long form point of view, we have the examples on the previous page. The average daily usage is roughly 70 to 90 minutes, depending on who gives you that data. And don't be afraid to post in its full glory. Post that content. If you're doing long form content, if you have brochures or floor plans or whatever it is, post it out on WeChat. There's the opportunity to post a lot of information on WeChat, and we'll look at just how much you can do with a normal service account on WeChat shortly. Post as much as possible. So the functionality within WeChat is for service accounts, which you guys will have or not yet, is 1 time per week. But what you might not know is that in that one sort of broadcast slot, you can actually post 8 articles. So there is an opportunity there, if you have this much content, to post 32 articles, long form articles every month. Now, most clients don't have that much content. But if you do have that content, push it out there, put it out there, particularly if you've already put it out here in Europe or in the US. Because it makes sense to, it's already gone through the approval, the rigmarole of getting signed off here. So it's equally likely that it will do as good, if not better, on WeChat. Our 5th top tip is keep the conversation in WeChat. So a lot of what we see, particularly in real estate, is we're trying to capture emails, and that's all very well for CRMs and the like, but it isn't native to that Chinese buyer. So where possible, particularly if a user's getting in touch with WeChat, keep that conversation in WeChat, keep the sales cycle happening in WeChat, because that's what they'd normally do. And again, a lot of this is about replicating what it would be like for a Chinese buyer to buy a house in China, however they're doing it overseas. So if you can keep everything in WeChat, please do, and make sure that user is aware of who's going to contact them on the next step if it's not you. Our next top tip is use the menu functionality. So WeChat has loads of cool, nifty functionality built into it. So it's almost like having your own little mini website in WeChat. So it has, as a header menu, you can have 3 header menus, and each of those drop down into a 5 subsection menu. So think about how the user is going to navigate your smaller WeChat website, and make sure that you cater to every possible option that the user and the buyer may have. Our next top tip is to post at a consistent time each week. And we'd say that to a Western client or a Chinese client. So just keep an idea of when you're going to post, test it to begin with, or ask our advice and we'll come back to you with a recommendation. But then once you've got that perfect slot, keep to it, and your users and followers will expect you to post at that time each week. QR codes are key to everything in China. They're literally the way of buying everything, of doing anything, of visiting a site, of literally everywhere. And as part of your official account on WeChat, you will have your QR code, and that QR code is something that you should look to add certainly to any landing page where you want the communication to come off your website back into WeChat where they're more comfortable. And perhaps your events in China or events near China, use your QR, because that's what's expected. It's very normal for a user to scan your QR, follow your brand, and then get your updates and start to grow that brand loyalty. So do use it. Watch the data. So, for example, Reach has, again, a fully engaged data reporting tool, which is plugged into WeChat, so you can get all that data back in English. And there's loads of data in there. If you want to know, how many of your followers are in tier 3 or 4 cities, that's data you can get back out of WeChat. And once you've got that data, it's really useful particularly from an advertising perspective. So if you already know what type of user and buyer is going to be interested in your properties, why not activate more to them? Why not typecast that user and then activate an advertising campaign? And we do a lot of that with regard to clients who are already active in China. And finally, but probably most importantly, is don't think of your China marketing strategy as separate from your global one. It isn't, and it shouldn't be. And our advice is to make WeChat, which is by far away the leading social media app in China, fundamental, not only to your APAC strategy, but to your global strategy. And it shouldn't be the tools that we're launching, like Reach SEM, like Reach, are there to really make that overall comprehension of the global marketing campaign widely accessible to you as the client. And I think part of the walls that have been built up in the past, come off the narrative of the China firewall or the fact that it's all different ecosystems, different apps. But the functionality, the basic functions of those apps are very similar to Western apps. And if you're marketing in the same way, but everything is done to perfectly translated and localized, then your understanding of your WeChat activation should be slot in neatly to your global campaign. Cool. I want to touch on Weibo. So Weibo is your Chinese Twitter app. It's microblogging and vlogging. So similar to Twitter, it used to have, that 280 character limit, and then it removed it, similar to Twitter. But it's very much kind of where Chinese go to get their latest news, their latest viral information. So think of it as that sort of newsy place. It's much easier to get thousands of followers on Weibo. It has an open platform architecture, which means when you post on Weibo, everybody can see your posts. So if you're hashtagging things, then anybody who's looking for those hashtags will see your posts. And WeChat, again, is not like that. So when you post on WeChat, you're posting to your followers only. So a very different sort of social media platform to WeChat. It has all the functionality that most of the apps do now. So there's a strong gaming element to it. Live streaming is kind of key to all of the platforms now. It's used more and more for e-commerce, which won't necessarily be relevant to you. And then it's 30% owned by Alibaba. So a lot of the Western brands that we work with who are activating Tmall stores will also run advertising on this campaign to just drive sales. And then very much the Chinese Twitter. So let's have a look at Reach. How can you, as the developer, as the brand, activate easily on both of these social media channels? So this is Reach. This is actually the overview. So Reach is something we developed and launched earlier this year. It is a social media scheduler, but it also has the added functionality of inbuilt translation, proofreading, and localization. So how we try to describe it is similar to Buffer or Hootsuite or Sprout Social, but with that translation element added in. There are many advantages to using Reach, some of which you can see listed here. It's quite text heavy, but you can see that setup is usually faster. And also if you have an issue with personal data, we've removed some of the requirements for that if you want to activate a WeChat account on Reach. And this is just a very simple, cost-efficient solution. Prices start £85 a month. And before we launched this platform, we kind of did our due diligence, looked at what offerings there were on the market, and discovered that actually we could launch a similar product at just a much lower cost activation. So anyway, we'll provide a link at the end for anyone who wants a Reach demo. I now want to look at TikTok, to Douyin. So if you look at TikTok, TikTok is the darling of Western media. It has 1 billion monthly active users. In media circles, everybody's buzzing about it. It very much is the flavor of the year still. And it has all of this great functionality, and 1 out of 7 human beings use the platform. Younger demographic, but 1 out of 7. However, Douyin, okay, yeah, 600 million monthly active users. But if you look at that as a percentage proportion of the population, that's actually 2 out of every 3 Chinese on Douyin. And if you have experimented, if you are experimenting with TikTok, then please reuse that content on Douyin. It just needs a little bit of tweaking, and you'd be surprised to see the engagement results off the back of that. The engagement results for the platform, broadly speaking, are 67 minutes average time spent on the platform, which is a huge amount of time. How does Douyin work? Exactly the same as TikTok. So it's algorithmically based, and that is one of the key, if that is the main key USP to TikTok and Douyin, is the strength and power of its algorithm. When Trump was asking Oracle to buy TikTok in the US, the Chinese government said that actually that algorithm is now protected and that can't be solved. And that's just how important that algorithm is. So it's an algorithm that is based on a myriad of data points, too many to count, and the difference between just pushing out a video on Facebook compared to pushing it out on TikTok is basically that user pool engagement and then next user pool increase accordingly. So if you have good content, it can very easily go viral, or much easily go viral on Douyin or TikTok. So you're on TikTok or you're thinking about it, then if you want to be on Douyin too, there are already plenty of businesses, plenty of developers on Douyin. There are 5 million companies totally on Douyin, across 29 verticals, and apparently there's 18 business opportunities brought for every video that's posted there. There's an example of a business account there on the right. So you have your video at the top. And again, it's similar to that sort of WeChat where you've got additional menu functionality. You've got the ability to add sort of branded hashtags, and you can link out to a shop or link out to a website. Let's have a look at a agent on Douyin. And this is a company that is based in London and also in, I think, Shanghai. This has been translated. And this is a very basic sort of tour video. So it's the kind of thing that you're likely producing on a very regular basis. And you can see here the engagement levels are through the roof. And if you were posting out one video on an equivalent Western channel and you have that level of engagement, 167 comments or 143 comments, that is a fabulous return on investment. And what we found is that if you're already doing these videos for the West, there is nothing more you need to do apart from a little bit of editing and a voiceover into Chinese, and you've got the perfect video to really kind of gauge and create interest in China. So there's an example. We've got many examples of how to do Douyin. So just to give an overview of the platforms that we've looked at, we looked at Weibo. So Weibo is very much Chinese Twitter. We have Douyin. So this is TikTok in China, 2 very distinct separate apps, and currently activated through a managed service. So let us know if you want any more information on Douyin. And then we have Jihu, which is very much a sort of question and answer forum website in China, and lots of the conversation in China is about, should I be buying in London or should I be buying in Dubai? And as a brand, you can decide whether, I think we should get involved in that, and then you can directly address that customer before they're really in the buying cycle. So that's pretty cool. So how does search and social work together? So there's basically a combination of 2 things happening here. You have a research phase and then a consideration phase. That research phase is basically about making sure that you're visible in search and in SEO, keenly in search and less so in SEO, particularly if you're starting out, which is very easily done, and the results are very demonstrable, and you can test that at a very competitive budget. And then from a consideration point of view, are you always visible in that sort of social media time when they're perhaps flicking through videos on Douyin or kind of looking or speaking to their colleagues on WeChat? So what's the cycle? Where are they going to buy and why are they going to buy? And we looked at some of those motivations earlier. Are they now in that consider sort of following brand? Are they following you on WeChat and Weibo? So hopefully they're at that stage. And then it's not a decision of simply buying a house. There's an awful lot of research that goes on for Chinese before they make that commitment. And ultimately, you're trying to build trust and loyalty with that follower to drive that ultimate sale. I want to look at some landing pages here. So we've got a couple of examples here. And you have one on the left, which is an H5 in WeChat. So that's kind of like a little quickly spun up mini site in WeChat. And you can see here that they're talking very clearly about the investment opportunities. So a lot of this is about investment diversification. And on the right, this is very much about lead capture. So you can see almost how the 2 different clients have come at it. On the right, they offer all of their brochures to download as PDFs and in Chinese, and then they go for the data capture, and they're obviously asking for WeChat IDs, and they've also got that QR code pretty central to the landing page. So, make sure that WeChat is, again, ingratiated not just into your social media strategy, but into your website strategy too. So let's have a journey overview recap. This is what's happening. So the user's thinking about buying that overseas property. So are you running your Baidu paid search? Are you visible on some of the portal sites like Juwai or Fang? And you've got those social media accounts on WeChat and Weibo set up. The user is then deciding where and when to buy the property. And the way there is to build that trust and follower base is post regularly and consistently across those channels that you've now set up, and address those buyer motivations over and over again. So be super visible in a way that is keenly felt by the buyer. The next step is the user has a clear, understood direction. They know where they're going to buy in the world, and they have an understanding of perhaps the property that they want to buy. And at that point, make it as easy as it is to buy in China. So keep that communication native to them within WeChat, and make sure all of the information following communiques is done in Chinese. So you've got your brochures and all of the prior contact in Chinese. That user is then kind of working its way through the funnel, and they're close to making that buy, that they're making an offer. And that's when it comes about contact. So keep that momentum. Offer all the investment opportunities on the development, on the floor plans, videos, and the sales rep should be constantly engaged with that user. It should become their trusted consultant, and contact them in different ways, not just the odd follow-up text. So the buyer is now in the process of making an offer, and that's great, and that's the aim of all the marketing here. And do get that review and testimonial from that user, which you can reuse, analyze the success of the marketing campaign that went to drive that, and then scale that activity accordingly. So ultimately, what we're trying to say is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is a great circular tool, and all we're saying is you just need to make it go that little bit further. And platforms like Reach, enable you to do that, and platforms like Reach SEM enable you to kind of use existing tools that are Chinese, but in a language that you're more comfortable with. I wanted to touch quickly on landing pages again and websites, and we do get asked a lot about this. So do you need a Chinese website? Our answer is generally fundamentally no. And some of the myths that have come up about that are as follows. So if you have a website domained in China, it can't be blocked. It's not true. So your website can be blocked at any point by Beijing if they decide that the content in that website is not right for Chinese netizens. So it can be blocked even quicker if it's domained in China than say if it was domained outside China. So that's a myth that we're trying to get rid of. The load speeds will be faster. Possibly, yeah. So yeah, well, they will be faster, but we have a campaign sort of threshold of 3 to 5 seconds where we don't want any load speeds over that, and most of the time the websites that we're running campaigns to are not over that period. But make sure that we do the audit, or someone does the audit, and when you launch the campaign, you're comfortable that the user in China is getting that information back faster than 5 seconds. Perhaps you've been told that you need to have an ICP license, so you need to have your website domained in China. Again, that's not the case, and a lot of what we do at Westwin is making sure that the clients that we work with are aware that it's a global world, and some of these firewall myths perpetuate wrongly, and it's a case of you don't need your website domained in China, and if you do, of course we can do that, but there will be other logistical and documentation that we'll need to do that. And then finally, a quick fix is something. So say you want a faster loading website, you've done all your accessibility issues, you just want to check the speed. There are very convenient, cost-efficient solutions out there. We mostly advise Alibaba ACS solution, where you can speed up the delivery of your pages for as little as $5 a month. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You really can just activate marketing campaigns in China almost as easily as you do here in Europe. So in summary, we looked at 4 main platforms. So we have WeChat. WeChat is the one app that you really are expected to be on in China. If you're not already on it, please go about setting it up either directly through us, through a solution like Reach, or speak to WeChat themselves. Once you're on it, use the functionality of Reach to kind of post out as much content as you have, which will be relevant to your users. For Weibo, again, a much easier platform to kind of see the follower increase. Once you're on Weibo, use it like Twitter, get out that latest news, get out your latest investment opportunity portfolio, and make sure that it's pushed out there in a timely manner as it is done on the Western equivalent. For TikTok, if you are considering TikTok or you are already on TikTok, do consider, or do just get that same content out on Douyin, slightly localized and translated, and you will be surprised by the level of engagement that you see. And finally, Baidu. So this is where the research happens, and this is where, why we've launched solutions like Reach SEM, to really navigate that user and get them the answers they need, which make almost certain that when they're in that buy phase, you're there as a developer or as the agent. So that's all from me. I'm going to hand over to G now, who will take us through some actual examples of the types of buyer in China. So over to you, G.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, everyone. From my side, a bit, because Alan has given us so much information, and I also learned a lot from Alan's sharing the digital platforms. So from my part, I will give you some insights to understand the Chinese customers, Chinese buyers. So to help you to get some insights why the Chinese buyers want to buy properties overseas. So 2 points to understand Chinese buyers, and also to help you to know what to talk to them. The next page. So I generally divided the Chinese buyer into 3 different groups. The first group is the parents, because for Chinese parents, this is very important for them. More and more Chinese parents sending their children to study abroad, like Alan mentioned earlier in the presentation. So there is a very common thing that when we talk about Chinese education, we believe the strong competition from the starting point. Say, if you can't get into the top 100 today, you won't be able to get into a good high school. If you cannot get into a good high school, you won't be able to get into a good university. Then if you cannot get into a good university, your life will be a failure. That is what is very common talking about in Chinese parents. So as Alan mentioned, education is really important when mentioning the properties features. So what to talk, for example, education. One child policy, under this policy for over 30 years, for many Chinese parents, education is the best investment. So another concept might be mentioned like 学区房 is, if we translate it into English, kind of like school district property, that property near the good schools. So no matter which city you are in, school district properties is a very popular investment, either in London or in other cities. So come to the group 2, next page. The group 2 we say is the middle class, which living in Shanghai or working in the tier 1 cities. Because, for example, my friend, she is now working in Beijing, but she and her husband would like to say, look, Beijing property is so expensive, we will spend a very long time of total salaries to spend for Beijing property. So they didn't manage to buy property in Beijing, but they bought 2 properties in Manchester. So this is an example that why middle class in China want to buy properties overseas. Some facts here that is very common talked about in China. If a white collar, middle class, she's working in Shanghai, her total salary, annual salary will spend about 60 years annual salary to buy a property in Shanghai in average. In Guangzhou, the years will be 38 years. In Shenzhen, it's even more crazy, 107 years of salary to buy a Shenzhen property in average. Other small cities around 25 years. So based on this understanding, what we talk to them will be much more clearer. Say the salary cannot follow up with the speed of property price increasing. Over 50 years of salary to buy a house in the living city. Why we should have other options, then that will be a strong persuasion to ask them to buy properties overseas. The third group, I say, is a high net wealth individuals. This group number is still increasing. In China at the moment, the high net wealth individuals own the money $1 million US. The number is over 5 million already. So also the age is becoming younger than years ago. Nearly half they are under 40 years old and they are well educated. So based on the policy that in China, we have a policy from the government that basic purchase restrictions. So families with local household in the family unit in each city can own maximum 2 properties. So that's why the rich people want to buy properties from the overseas countries. So what to say to them is quite different, because the very rich people, they want more emotional link to the brand. So they are very brand driven. To communicate with them like a person, your brand, your properties, like the unique personality will definitely help to create strong emotional link with them. The second that we would recommend is the influencer marketing. Say if we deeply believe that my friend or someone that I know tell me that property is really good, I definitely will buy it. So KOL campaigns to shape the conversations and build compelling narratives will be very helpful, especially for the high net wealth individuals, this group. So finally, a very brief summary. The channels, as Ellen mentioned, that different audiences groups have different digital media preferences. However, Baidu, WeChat, and Weibo are still the top 3 that we would highly recommend as a fundamental digital media platforms. The second one is targeting. The digital platforms in China, we can all use the targeting strategy to maximum the conversation rates and to make it real conversions. The third one is contents, as the insights, hopefully to understand the Chinese people's mindset and the culture, some little bit more background will help you to know what conversation, what contents we will deliver. Our advertising or social media contents will provide answers to the target audiences about your properties. That's all from my side.
Thanks, Ji. And then just to say, you know, if you want any more information, if you want, we can offer sort of discounts on the Reach platform. Just drop us an email at that email address there, and then we'll be happy to help and assist in any way we can.
Yeah, and I'm just conscious we're slightly over time, so we have got one question. So, what social media platform would you compare WeChat to? I guess in the West, what would you say? I mean, I know it's a very challenging question, that one.
Yeah. So I mean, normally, you know, it's a question we get quite a lot, and normally I say sort of Facebook and WhatsApp. So it's kind of fundamentally it's WhatsApp in its communication functionality, and it's Facebook with regards to sort of the feed, and then but the other thing is it's a plugged-in app store. So you have the mini programs, and a lot of those mini programs are navigable straight from landing in the app, so they feel authentic as part of WeChat, even though they're often a different provider. Ji, what would you say?
Yeah, I agree with Alan. more likely, we say WeChat is kind of a combination of WhatsApp and Facebook. From my understanding is there is nothing in the Western digital media can compare or similar like WeChat, because WeChat, we have everything. It's kind of life. If I don't use WhatsApp for 1 week, I think it's okay. But if I don't use Facebook, it's also okay. It's also fine currently. But if I don't use WeChat for 1 week, it will be crazy. I cannot live in China at all. So because we not only communicate with our families, our friends, or colleagues, have meetings on WeChat, we also pay our bills, we shop everything on WeChat. So if, for example, if you go to a market, there is no, if you want to pay cash, the staff will say, no, please pay me on WeChat. That's why I'm saying WeChat in one sentence is our life. That's why, as Alan mentioned, it's a very fundamental that digital media that we should consider about when first coming to China, because just the users are all there, everything, life is on WeChat. Hopefully it's helpful.
And I think that's all of our questions and also all of our time. So I'd just like to thank you all for coming. If you need any information, head over to Reach website or Westwin, and we will send a follow-up email and this video will be made available. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.